Hi everybody, my name's Paul Murphy and I've got a passion for hats.
When I'm making hats, there's a whole process that we go through from start to finish, and there's also an awful lot of equipment that we use. And I thought what I'd do is take a few moments just to take you through the sort of process that you go through to make a hat and some of the equipment that we use, because I've managed to pick up some pretty good old pieces of equipment from I guess known makers throughout the UK, and I'm repurposing them for my use. So when you start off with a hat, you start off with a felt caplin or when you start to make a hat, you start first of all with a felt base, and let's show you one of those. This is a felt base, or caplin as we call it, that I buy them in from Fepsa, the guys in Portugal. They're probably the best manufacturers of felts in the world. They're probably smaller manufacturers that do a very, very nice job as well, but certainly what I've worked with so far, Fepsa and Tonak over in Hungary and what have you, are very nice. But this particular one is a cashmere. I haven't made a cashmere hat before, so I thought I'd buy one and try it. But that's typically how they arrive. If I'm making a custom hat for somebody, then we need to find the size of the head and the shape of the head. And what I've used is, I don't know whether many of you've seen these things, but these are I think they're filled with lead because they're quite heavy and they're plastic, and they just mold around to various shapes when you're doing DIY around the house. Now, if you get hold of one of these, and I'll just show you actually, you take your hat off, I tend to put these around the head where you're going to wear the hat, cross over, and that's it. Now, if I take that off, which I will, can you see that's my shape of my head? It's oval, and it's quite regular. It comes up at about a 59.5, I think, up to 60. But what I do from there is I put that on a piece of paper and draw around it inside. So then I've got the shape of mine or whoever's head I'm making a hat for. And that enables me to sort of start to think about what hat block I would use to actually make that hat. Now, if it's a head that's slightly bigger than the hat block, I'd make the hat on the block and then stretch it slightly before putting the sweatband on. So I've got a hat stretcher, and I haven't brought that in today to show you, but I think some of you have seen it in my other videos. So once you take the measurement of the hat, you then have a hat block. Hat blocks come in all shapes and sizes, and what I have tended to do is go for a much longer or higher crown than normal. Most hats from the base to here are normally around 10 centimeters. I like making them when they're anything between 10 and 12 centimeters. I think they look a lot more like the 1930s, 1940s hats, and they come up really well. I mean, here's one that I've made recently. I'm quite proud of, and I think I really, well, I don't think I love that hat, and I bought more of the green felts to make more because people have commented on how nice it comes up. Has a nice snap brim. This is a rabbit felt, again from Fepsa, very, very light, with a nice leather sweatband, and I'm just working on the linings at the moment so I can make my custom linings. But this is a real sort of nice nice hat that's custom made for myself, and it was put on the block and then off the block, stretched it slightly, and then after the stretching, you're then putting on a sweatband, which we've seen the leather sweatbands. But during the stretching, let's take you on to some of the tools that we use during the stretching. So you've got the hat block, you've got the felt on the hat block, and you're bringing it down. It's actually been wet, and you're trying to apply it to shape. And you use, I've made up these couple of tools. So we use a pusher downer, which essentially we're using a cord to go round the block and you're pushing down that cord so you can get an even fit of the felt around the hat block. And this is a puller downer. So here, this is a really good bit of kit. You just hold the felt and you pull it down, use all your weight to pull it down around the hat brim. And I know they look very basic, but they really, really work very, very well. And in fact, let me just show you, where have I got that hat? Let's have a look. There it is. This is a hat that I'm just working on at the moment, and it's a Western felt, and I've just been finishing pulling it down. And in fact, the most difficult part, really, most difficult, yeah, probably is the most difficult part, is actually getting a good fit between the crown and the flange. Look at that, that angle that you're trying to get to start off with, a nice sharp corner there. And so you're pulling it down, getting it onto here, and then you're letting the felt dry. Once the felt is going through that process of being pulled down, you need to flatten this brim, and the things that you use to flatten the brim are brim irons, and they are a Tolica. So this is a Tolica. It's a this is a classic one from the 1800s, I think. It's in wood, and this one's been very, very well used by a UK hat maker. I managed to pick it up at an antiques tool sales room, and here what you do there is you're going around the brim of the hat. If you can see the brim and you can see the Tolica, it's actually forming around the brim, the actual line between the crown and the brim. So you're pushing down with your weight on that. Now, if that doesn't make as crisp a line as you want it to, and in fact I tend to use other things as well. You've then got, can you see that little mini iron? It's literally about 10 centimeters from tip to tail. And I put that on a single burner electric cooking aid, I suppose. It's one of those things you can put in the kitchen with just one single burner on. I put it in the hat room, put this on, it heats it up, and then I'm pushing it down on some plyboard that I've got that's very, very flat for the job, and then I'm running this around. So combination of steam from the steam iron, heat from the iron here, and this is really quite heavy, and this will really sharpen up the edge there. So that's a nice tool. Another classic tool is this, a brim iron. So a brim iron, same again, put it on the heat and get it up to temperature, put some water on your felt, and then you're going around the edge here to crispen up that that flange and that actual point of touch between the crown and the brim. So that's another classic tool. To help us get the shape of the head for custom hats correct, we have to measure them, of course, and we use this as a measurement tool. So this is another old classic measurement tool. In fact, it's only measuring in inches, and also in the hat size. It's the UK hat sizes, but it's like a pair of scissors within metal. I guess it's about 2.5 centimeters wide. It's English made, and you just pull it out or pull it back, and it goes to size. So what you're doing is just plopping it into the brim of the hat, and then or rather the opening of the hat, and then you're just pressing it out. Now this one, it's 7.5 at the moment, and it's usually about 1/4 of a size bigger than when you finally finish with the hat. So what happens is this sweatband will fit just inside there, and it will knock it back sort of 1/4 of a size, I suppose, something like that, when it goes in there. So this one is being made for myself and by myself, and it's of a Western weight, and I'm really looking forward to this because it's coming up to be a really nice hat. But in addition to all of this, then we need to be able to cut felt, and we need to be able to cut the material for making the sweatbands, and also the linings inside. So an investment in a couple of tools there. And I think one of the best things I bought was a decent set of scissors. And this is these are dressmaking scissors. Actually, they're quite sharp, quite reasonable. You wouldn't use this on paper or anything, you only keep this for material, but they are an absolute godsend to getting a nice crisp edge on any of the cutting that you're doing when you're making hats. Another important tool for when you're making hats, and in fact a very important part of the construction of the hat, is actually to get the brim cut correctly. Because if you can imagine that you've shaped your caplin here, you need to cut off the excess amount of material. And how do you do that? Well, there are a number of different ways of doing it, and there are traditional cutters, and then there's things like Guy Morse Brown is a big company within the hat supply business. They make blocks and they make other pieces of equipment, and one of the things they make is a brim cutting solution. What they supply is actually a series of, you can probably just see this as it's a perspex acrylic circle with a hole in the middle. It does have a size, you won't be able to see it, but it does have a size mark on here. And then there's a small, tiny wooden round peg, which actually fits in the hole. Now, what happens is that, see if I can show you. When this is on a flat board, and you take this and you put it on the brim, like so, you then put the wooden peg inside the hole with a scalpel blade, and then you roll this circular acrylic device around the brim whilst it's still on the block, and that enables you to cut a perfectly regular brim. Now that's one solution. The other solution, and I've only got one that I've made up myself, is this contraption. And this contraption is quite simply, I've put it with a wooden acrylic because I like a nice big thick chunk here to go in line with the block and the hat. And then what I've done is I've cut slots, I think you see them, at set points along this open part here, to enable me to put a Stanley knife blade, which is this, into each of the slots. And it's clearly that slot gives me a set distance from the brim, from the crown to where I want to cut the brim. So if you can just see, that sits nicely on there. When it's in the block and on flat, it works a lot easier. And you're pushing it and you're cutting it around the actual brim. And that seems to work extremely well. Now I'm actually working on something to make this out of acrylic at the moment, and the designs are being done, and we'll see what happens. But it's proving to be a very cost-effective way of cutting the brim. Because I looked at the price of the brim cutters, and they're really quite expensive. Anything from sort of 150 to 350 pounds, which is quite a chunk of money when you're first starting out. And so I opted to make that one and buy the Guy Morse solution. And you know, I use either or both, you know, depending on what type of material I'm using. For the thicker felts, I'm using this, and for the thinner felts, I'm using the Guy Morse, but it doesn't really matter. Both of them do a good job, to be fair. On from there, when we've got the felt to the point where we've stretched it over the block, we've actually made a great crease, flange, whatever you want to call it here, and the brim's nice and flat, and it's all dried out and it's all been cut, then what we need to do is we need to pounce the felt. What does that mean, pounce? Well, it means, really counterintuitively, for me anyway, you need to get hold of some sandpaper. Now 800 grit sandpaper is ideal for this, and you're going around and you're actually sanding the hat. So by sanding the hat, you're actually getting off a lot of the sort of imperfections, and you're making the hat felt a lot smoother. I mean, this one at the moment, it just feels superb. It's a 250 gram Western weight rabbit, 100% rabbit fur felt, and it's really, really light now, and it's very, very soft. It's like velvet to touch, and you know, there is a difference between rabbit and beaver. There is, of course there is, but actually this is superb. And what I'm looking to do, in fact, I'll show you what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to put a crease down the middle, and then put a couple of side vents, and then have it very much like a fedora. I mean, it's because it's a Western way, it needs to have steam on it but it's very much similar to the I guess it's the Indiana Jones look, but it will be quite a high crown, as you can see, and that will be a really robust hat once it's actually finished. And hopefully I'll get onto that later on today and do some more work on it. But so Pouncing, couple of grades of sandpaper, and you know, I spent an hour on that, probably about an hour and 15 minutes on that hat last night. It does make a mess. Use a vacuum cleaner, wear a mask if you've got respiratory problems. But it's a great tip to use if you've got an older hat that's a bit dirty. I mean, yes, by all means, you've got to use the tape to get all the dust and the felt off, but then using this will help get off any other sort of more stubborn impurities, shall I say, and also freshen up the felt. So worthwhile before you add any steam, then use the sandpaper. So once you're at this stage, then you go into sewing the sweatbands, and for that you can do it manually or you can do it with a sewing machine. Now, what a lot of people do is, and in fact what I'm doing is cutting the sweatband to a point where you can actually then use the sewing machine to join up the two parts. And then as most of you may or may not know, modern hats of a certain age have a thing called a reed running through it. And what a reed is simply a piece of plastic nowadays that is going through a part of the sweatband to keep it with some form of shape, if you like, and that shape transfers onto the hat when it's actually installed in the hat. And if you can see here, there's a black bit and there's a brown bit. Now, between the black bit and the brown bit, it's actually been sewn on, and there's a little bit of a gullyway, if you like, there, a dip, and I sew in that dip through the hat, and the actual sewn cotton, whilst you can see it on the hat when it's raw like this, when you've actually got the grosgrain on there, you won't see it, so it's absolutely fine. So that goes in, and then you start looking at things like the liner, and the modern way of putting a liner in is with glue. I tend to use stitches, and again, keeping the stitches so that they are below where the grosgrain is going to be, then you can cover up the stitches. And when it comes to a point where you want to clean the liner, you can undo the stitches, pull out the cotton, put out the liner and wash it, and then put it back in and renew the stitches. So that's the sort of traditional way and the handmade way of doing things. Once you've done that, then you're looking at the grosgrain, and clearly there are lots and lots of different options. I tend to use a Petersham grosgrain, and it's dyed in the UK, and I pick it up in rolls of 30 meters, which is more than enough obviously to do a hat. It takes about a meter to go around the brim and do the bow, and on occasion I'll put the thinner 16mm grosgrain around the actual brim of the hat. Not on every hat, but around the brim. And it's a bit of a trademark really, how you do your bow. And you know, I like doing my bows like I've done here. And it's a fairly sort of traditional look. A lot of the hatters in the UK use that look, and yeah, I think it looks quite smart, and certainly sits well on the hat. And I like this 38mm size. I do have the smaller, I think it's 18mm or something. No, not 18. 25mm or something. Anyway, there's 3 sizes that I have in the different colours. So that's quite a nice finish. And when you've done that, you're then getting into the shaping of the crown, of course. So you've got the grosgrain on there, you've got the bow stitched on there. You may or may not have the edge sewn and stitched, and then you're into steaming and forming the crown. And obviously you can steam and form that in, whether it's a central crease, a teardrop, a diamond, lots of different shapes and different things that you can do. And I find that quite exciting. And do you know what? When I'm making a hat, a lot of the time the hat will dictate the crown that I put on it, and that sounds unusual, and I wasn't expecting it, but whatever the size of the height of the crown, when you're making it and you're feeling the actual felt, and you're trying it on or trying it on one of the blocks or whatever, it does sort of feel its way to that style of crown. Now, in addition to that, you're looking at how do you want the brim to look, and of course there's things called brim blocks. So this is a brim block. It's a nice piece of wood on a stand. This one's made by Guy Morse Brown, which I very much appreciate because it was on the shelf and I could buy it immediately. So whilst my blocks have come from Boone and Lane, thanks Alan, done a great job. They wanted another 4 or 5 weeks for me to wait for this, and it was my fault that I didn't actually see the benefits of ordering one of these at the time when I ordered my blocks. Another tip, if you are going to be serious about making hats, order a brim block with your hat blocks, because it makes life so much easier. You have a lovely crown on your felt, and then you come to forming the brim and you're going to struggle without a brim block. So what happens here is you put the hat down through the brim block, usually with either a stretcher or the original hat block, and it will sit down in. Now this one is too small for this, and I've got a bigger one on order with Guy Morse Brown at the moment, but they sit in here, and then the felt on the sides here will go over the profile of the wood, and then you steam it and iron it and put cloth over it, and that will give you a brim shape. Now with all of this, if the shapes aren't coming through and staying in, then you need to put some stiffener on it. Now whether that's shellac or whether it's hairspray stiffener or whatever, depends on how serious a level of stiffness you want to put into the hat, and what you feel has been added already at the factory by the supplier of the felt. So that's something you learn as you go along. Once you've formed your brim, you can go back and you'll be forming your crown shape, and your hat then is finished basically. You've got your liner in, you've got your sweatband in, you've got your shape for the crown and the actual brim, and yeah, looking pretty good. But what I would say is that I've gone on the journey of learning how to make hats. Mostly I've watched videos on YouTube, and people like Hornscoff and Hufford and Wolfbray. These are artisan manufacturers. They're people who've over the years made some gorgeous hats and strides within our industry, and brought back a lot of the traditional ways of doing things. And all I'm hoping to do is to do the same, but here in England. And as much as you know, I love making the hats, and I keep all of them myself, but I will be selling them. So if you're interested in a custom made hat, get in touch, and we can see what we can do for you. But I'm really about the enjoyment of doing it. And if you haven't got a hobby, if you like hats, then hat making may well be for you. But just be aware, it is so compelling when you find a new tool, or you find some new felts or new material. And it is one of those rabbit holes that once you go down it, you never seem to come out the other end. But it's an absolute fabulous pastime, and at the end of it, you can usually make some pretty good hats. Enjoy your hatting. Thanks.
If you've got a passion for hats, keep watching the channel. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.